Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the second of today's webinars on the NIHR Global Advanced Fellowships. We had a webinar this morning, which we had a good attendance and saw a lot of people joining us with a lot of interest for the scheme, which is brilliant. And hopefully, again, we'll have similar enthusiasm this afternoon. We're joined today. So my name is Hayley Mableson, and I'm a Senior Programme Manager at the NIHR, working in the team that manages the fellowships. We're joined today by the NIHR's Global Health Research Programme Director, Professor Kara Hansen, and one of the funding committee co-chairs for the Global Advanced Fellowships, Professor Hannah Cooper. And we'll be giving you an overview of the fellowships. So a quick look at the agenda that things we'll be covering today. So we'll start with Kara giving us an overview of the NIHR's Global Health Research portfolio and where the advanced fellowships fit within that. Then I'll take you through an overview of the fellowships themselves and what they include and what the application process looks like. And finally, Hannah will give us an insight into what makes a competitive fellowship application from the perspective of the committee. And finally, there will be time at the end of the webinar for Q&A. Throughout the three presentations, please do use the Q&A function to enter your questions. And you can also upvote for other people's questions in there. So if somebody's already asked something similar to what you're thinking about, then do upvote that. And we'll start by answering the most popular questions first. Please do use the Q&A function as opposed to the chat, as that's where we'll be managing the questions. We do expect a lot of questions today, so if we don't get a chance to answer your questions, we'll be updating our frequently asked questions after the webinar, but you also are welcome to email us directly. The email address will be shared in the chat and throughout the presentation, so do reach out to us with any specific queries. And try and keep the Q&A questions as generic as possible so that people are likely to have similar questions and upvote them, so that then we can try and provide answers for as many people as possible. So firstly, I'll pass over to Kara, who, as I said, will give us an overview of the Global Health Research portfolio.
Welcome, everybody. It's really nice to have you with us this afternoon at the second of these webinars on this new Advanced Fellowship scheme. Just to let you know a little bit about the National Institute for Health and Care Research. This is the main UK funder of health and care research, aiming at improving the health and the wealth of the nation through research. From 2016, the NIHR was entered into the field of funding global health research as well, with an allocation of UK overseas development assistance. And this is the icon on the far right of your screen. So this is our funding for applied global health research and training. Because it's funded through official development assistance, all research that's funded through the program needs to be aimed at benefit for those in low and middle income countries. Next slide, please. So this is our overarching strategic framework for the current period. The overall aim is to generate high quality research and training to address the needs of people in low and middle income countries. We have three areas of priority for our research. One is addressing the shifting global burden of disease. The second is developing health systems to identify and respond to population needs. And the third is to build resilience to tackle future global health threats. All of the research that is funded through the NIHR Global Health Research Program is really underpinned by what are really four principles. The first is that research should also aim to strengthen research capacity, both in low and middle income countries and in the United Kingdom. And then it should be done with three kind of underpinning principles. One is that it should be done through engagement with the community at all stages of the research, right from the identification of the priority needs, right through to the sharing of results and benefit from the research. The second is that research should be done through equitable partnerships. And that means through relationships between research organizations that are really based on principles of equity. And that has to do both with the allocation of funds, but also with the way that research questions are identified and formulated and designed, through to the way that research is conducted through collaborative and distributed leadership, and also that the benefits of doing research are shared fairly. So that includes the opportunities to publish and do comparative analysis with the data that are generated, but also to participate and contribute to the dissemination and uptake of research. Then finally, the third principle is that we want to fund research that will make a difference. So we are looking for researchers to propose ideas that will be policy relevant and impactful, and will really begin to, will paint a picture of both why there is a policy or program need for that research, but also what the pathway for impact will look like. Next slide, please. So this is a picture of the overall research portfolio of the Global Health Research Program and all the different schemes that are available. So we have three broad categories. One is where the research question is led by the researchers. That's our open awards. This is what we've called groups and units up till now, but the name of these awards will be changing and announced in the next few weeks. And also, importantly, our new development awards. So these are awards that are targeted to researchers based in low and middle income countries with the aim of developing high quality global health research applications. So it's funding and time to develop strong applications by doing some of the underpinning work, both around the research, but also around the development of capacity needs assessments, the building of partnerships, and the initiation of community engagement activities. I will say that this award is open now. It closes in a few weeks' time. And proposals to the development awards should be aiming at a future research call, but it doesn't have to be an NIHR research call. It could be aimed at other funding bodies. The second category of research programs are things that are thematic. So that's where the NIHR sets out a broad theme for research and invites proposals in that area. So the first really big one of these are global health research networks. They're also known as centers, and these are big cross-country consortia doing research on non-communicable diseases with a strong capacity strengthening element to them. The second thematic area is health policy and systems research. This is asking researchers to come up with ideas for how to improve health systems and policies and to generate health resilience for people and for health systems. And the third is what's known as RIGHT, our Research and Interventions for Global Health Transformation, which that's also a thematic call. So each year we issue a call on a specific health theme and invite proposals in that area. The one that's currently under consideration is looking at research on on primary prevention of cardiovascular disease in community settings. So that kind of level of specificity for a RIGHT call. The next RIGHT call will be opening later this year. Then we have these two capacity strengthening or personal awards. So one of them is our Global Health Research Professorships. Those are now 5 or 6 years old. Our very first professors are now just finishing up their programs of work. And these awards are aimed at outstanding academics at the professorial level. So people who are about to become professors, full professors, or are already kind of early in their professorial career. And this is to develop a team and do a high quality program of research. And then the last one, but not the least, is the advanced fellowships. And these have been designed because we've identified an important gap in that career pathway in funding for career development. So this is a new award. It is to support postdoctoral global health researchers to develop their own skills and capabilities and research expertise, but also to support the development of their institutions. So this is the program that we're going to talk about today. Next slide, please. So finally, just to give you a sense of the scale, so since 2016, we have funded over 300 different institutions involved in projects and partnerships. We've worked in at least more than 50 different countries, spanning the globe, looking at all ODA eligible countries. And we've supported more than 1,000 researchers from low and middle income countries to progress their careers through formal and informal training awards. So I will now pass back to Hayley.
Thank you, Cara. So I'll move on now to talking about the specifics of the Global Advanced Fellowships. So the fellowships sit within the NIHR Academy, which is focused on the development of people, health researchers that are conducting NIHR-funded research. And as Cara said, this has been part of the portfolio within global health since 2016. So our aims are to develop and coordinate the NIHR's academic training, career development, and research capacity strengthening development. We will manage national and global competitions for screening, for training, and career development awards. Our aim is to attract, train, and support the people that are conducting leading edge research focused on the needs of patients and the public, and developing the skills of the next generation of health and care researchers to find life-saving solutions to key emerging health and care problems. So, as Cara said, the NIHR Global Advanced Fellowship Award has launched, recognising a gap within the global health funding landscape for mid-career researchers, particularly those that are employed within low and middle income countries. So we've last week launched the Advanced Fellowship Scheme, which will be an annual scheme, which aims to address the gap by creating a sustainable pathway for research leadership for global health researchers at the postdoc level. We will be supporting postdoctoral researchers to conduct a research project within a strategic area of applied global health. And they'll also receive a bespoke training and development program that's relevant to their needs, recognizing the fellowship element of this funding. Finally, we're aiming to strengthen institutional capacity for research within low and middle income countries. So this slide shows a simplified version of the theory of change for the fellowships, which will be published in the coming weeks. But the main thing to highlight here is that to achieve the impacts or the proposed impacts of improving health and well-being within low and middle income countries and achieving a strong, sustainable research ecosystem that addresses the health needs within low and middle income countries, we see three main pathways to achieving these impacts. And they are through research that informs policy and practice, developing individual career development, and finally, as I say, through that institutional capacity strengthening. So who's the award for? As I said, it's a postdoctoral scheme, and it has a really broad remit within that scope. So it's open to all postdoctoral levels, from anyone who has submitted a PhD or is about to be awarded a PhD, to someone with several years of postdoc experience, right up to when you would be appointed at the professor or chair level. So we would break this into kind of three main categories. So early postdoctoral, following the award of a PhD, those that are establishing their independence as a researcher or more senior postdocs, and finally those that are transitioning to research or are returning from a career break. It's important to note that obviously within this broad remit that applications will be judged individually based on your experience and the opportunities that have been available to you based on your professional background and circumstances. So the type of research that's in remit for these awards falls under the NIHR Academy's remit. So we're focused on applied health research. And again, that's really broad. The Global Advanced Fellowships won't have a thematic focus, so they are open within any area of applied health research that has a clear potential for directly benefiting patients, carers, and the public, while also obviously recognizing that training element of the research. It's important to highlight that the awards within the NIHR Global Health Research Programs do not support early translational research or experimental medicine. And in general, the NIHR does not support basic research or work that involves animals or their tissues. So do pay close attention to this remit when planning your research project. And what does the award include? So the fellowships can be conducted between 2 to 5 years. and there's funding available up to £750,000 per fellowship. This includes the salary for the applicant, and you can conduct the fellowship between 50 and 100% whole-time equivalent. We'll cover research costs, salary funding for a full-time research support post, which could be a PhD or a postdoc post, as well as providing funding for support staff, additional support staff such as admin or statisticians, fieldwork assistants, etc. But more details can be found on that and what's eligible for that within the guidance notes. We fund training and development for the applicant and the support post, including fees for conferences, etc. Travel for fieldwork, collaboration and training, community engagement and involvement, knowledge mobilization and research uptake, institutional capacity strengthening within the LMIC host or partner institution. And for this round one of the scheme, awards that those that are applying now would be looking to start their awards between the 1st of April and the 1st of October 2025. For this first round, we have up to 10 awards available. So in terms of the development, research support and mentoring element for the applicant, you need to identify within your application training that's needed to undertake the proposed research, as well as training to support your development as a future research leader. Within the application, you can include up to 4 mentors who can provide specific guided support for your research and career development, and they can be based within your host or partner organizations or elsewhere. But we'd expect at least half of those to be based within low and middle income country institutions. For the institutional capacity strengthening element, which fellowships must include, this should be focused within the low and middle income country institution that's part of your award, and that could either be your host or employing organization or a partner within the award. And it should be focused on building long-term sustainable research capacity. Recognizing that this scheme is obviously a fellowship scheme, up to 5% of the budget can be used for this institutional capacity strengthening element, and the activities should be developed in partnership with the organisation where the activities will take place. It's quite a broad remit, and we've just given some examples here, including training and development for research admin staff, establishing or strengthening and mentoring systems within institutions, or strengthening support systems such as IT, infrastructure, and libraries. In terms of the eligibility of the scheme, this is broken down into 3 levels. So the individual level, the institutional level, and the overseas development assistance. So individually, who can apply? So as I've said, the scheme is open to any postdoctoral level, any postdoctoral researchers. So you must hold a relevant PhD or postgrad medical research degree, or have submitted your thesis for examination at the time of the application. It's open to any professional background, clinical or non-clinical, and we do welcome applications from a broad range of professional backgrounds, including public health, health economists, statisticians, methodologists, etc., social scientists. So we do want to see applications from a broad range of professional backgrounds. You shouldn't already hold a professorship or chair at the time of application, but you must be employed or plan to be employed by a higher education institution or research institute within a low and middle income country, or a HEI within the UK. In terms of institutional eligibility, previously we've had limitations on which institutions in low and middle income countries can support applications to our personal awards. For this scheme, we're pleased to say that this has now been lifted, and any low and middle income country HEI or research institution that has a track record of research funding is eligible to support applications for this scheme. UK HEIs are also eligible, including the devolved nations. And this host organisation should be your substantive employer and will have overall responsibility for the proportionate, effective arrangements being in place to set up, run and report a research project. So they'll be responsible for the contracting and reporting of your award. And they must also be able to provide appropriate academic support throughout the length of the fellowship. In terms of partner organisations, applicants that are applying from UK host organisations must have at least one partner within a low and middle income country. Those that are applying from a low and middle income country institution can have partner organisations on their application, but it's not a requirement. One thing to highlight as well is that there isn't a limit on the number of applications that we will accept from each institution. However, we don't expect to fund more than 2 awards per host institution per round. And then for the overseas development assistance eligibility, applications must be able to demonstrate which country or countries, plural, on the list of ODA eligible countries will directly benefit from the research, and show how the application is directly and primarily relevant to the development challenges of those countries, and how the outcomes will promote health and welfare of those countries as well. It is possible to conduct some elements of research within the UK or within low middle income countries. However, the research outputs must be of direct and primary relevance to the health and care challenges of low and middle income countries. Therefore, undertaking research within a low and middle income country will need to be a large component of the proposal. So the application process, as you may be aware, the scheme opened last week on the 16th of April and will close on the 11th of July 2024. It's a single stage application process via our awards management system, Aramis, which you can find links to on our website in the guidance notes. And the application form guidance notes really walk applicants through in detail what needs to be included in each section, and what the committee will be looking for in applications. So there's 2 documents. So there's the guidance, the scheme guidance, as well as the application form guidance. And do make sure that you have looked at both of those on our website to support your application. In terms of the assessment process, as I said, the application window is currently open and will close in July, at which time an eligibility screening will be conducted by the NIHR, and eligible applications will be passed to the funding committee for review, and each application will be reviewed by 3 committee members. We'll then proceed to a shortlisting meeting where they'll determine which applications will be shortlisted to move to peer review and interview. Interviews will be hybrid, with applicants attending interviews virtually, and they will take place in January 2025. The committee then determines which applications are fundable and will provide recommendations to the Department of Health and Social Care based on the assessment criteria that can be found in the guidance notes. DHSC will then make a final decision. Outcomes will be confirmed to successful and unsuccessful candidates, and awards will start between the 1st of April and the 1st of October 2025. So what is the committee looking at? The assessment criteria covers 5 main areas, and the first of which is the person. So this is looking at your career to date, your career trajectory, and really thinking about the opportunities that have been available to you based on your professional background, and where you're based, etc. So what opportunities you've had and what you've taken up. Secondly, they look at the project, which they will be looking for a high quality research program that acts as a suitable vehicle for training for your fellowship. They'll look at the place, so as well as looking at the support, the mentoring that you've included on your application, they'll be looking at the host organisation and the level of support that they are providing to you, not necessarily looking at the reputation of the organisation. So again, not comparing one organisation to another, but really looking at how that institution is supporting you. They'll look at the training element, which should be bespoke and well thought out, specific to what is needed for you to conduct this fellowship. And finally, community engagement and involvement. The plan should be well thought out, inclusive, and should be integrated well into the project at all stages. And all these assessment criteria are viewed equally with equal weighting. So a bit of pre-application advice. As this is the first round of the Global Advanced Fellowships, we don't have data on success rates or competitiveness, but we did have an expression of interest form, which we had a high number of people complete. So we do believe that the number of applications is going to be high. And as I said, there are 10 awards available, so we do believe it's going to be very competitive. If you get 2 chances to apply for any one fellowship within the NIHR, so our advice would be to make sure that the time is right for you to apply for this. So make sure that you carefully read the guidance notes, you look at the application form, you contact us with any queries, and make sure that you know this is the right time within your career path to apply for this scheme. It is an annual scheme, so we'll be launching again next year. So you could take the opportunity to use the application form to prepare a strong application for next year if that suits you better. If you are planning to apply, don't leave your submission to the last minute. You will be required to have a number of signatories and participants confirm their participation within your fellowship. So this all takes time and all must be done by that final deadline. So don't leave everything to the last few days. Know your audience. So think about the funding committee members, your topic that you're working on, who might be reviewing your application, and talk to get feedback before you submit. So think about, going to your supervisor. Obviously, we don't have current award holders for this scheme, but we have the global research professors who may be able to provide guidance on the fellowship applications. Go to senior academics, methodological experts, collaborators, talk to your finance office within your institution to really help you to put together that strong application. So some common pitfalls that we see across our schemes. In terms of the remit, we see applications which fail to show how the research is important and benefits patients and/or the public. So it's really important that you do emphasize this so the committee can judge your proposal. Clarity and details. So we see research questions and aims and objectives that are not clear, or there's not enough detail to assess them effectively, or that the project doesn't feel like your individual project. Remember, this is a fellowship and it's individual. So make sure that it feels like you have ownership of that. We see applications that are overambitious, so they're not suitable for the level of the award, or they're not achievable within the time frame. In terms of support, we see applications where hosts and supervisors don't provide strong enough statements of support, or they're poorly articulating the supervisory experience. So make sure that your statement of support from your host institution is really tailored to you and shows how they'll support you through the fellowship. The training program, we see programs that are too generic or not suited to the applicant's needs, or too centered around the host organization's needs. So again, make sure this is tailored to you as an individual. In terms of overseas development assistance, we see people not being clear on the countries that the research will benefit or how it meets the development challenges of those countries. So this is really key that you highlight these things so that we know that the research is justified and needed. In terms of value for money, we see applications where the budget is unrealistic, or there's failure to justify the requested resources. So within the budget, within the application form, you're required to include justification for everything that you enter. So make sure you do this. And in terms of community engagement and involvement, we often see weak plans that are under budgeted or not embedded into the project, so don't feel like they're integrated into every stage. And this element will be judged by the CI specialist, so do make sure you think about it from the very beginning. We've touched on this already, but if you're unsuccessful, can you apply again? Broadly speaking, you can apply to the same scheme on one further occasion. So if you apply and you're deemed unfundable or unsuccessful, then you get one more chance. So do think about that, as I've said, in terms of whether the time is right for you. If your application is deemed fundable, but you aren't funded because, as I said, there's only 10 awards available, this doesn't count in your 2 tries, and you can keep trying. So some key information on the scheme. As I said, it's a postdoctoral scheme open to all stages of postdocs and career and all professions. Applicants can be based either within a UK HEI or a low middle income country HEI or research institution. We have up to 10 awards available in this first round, and this will increase in future rounds as well. The application window is currently open and will close on the 11th of July 2024. And there are no limit to the number of applications per institution. However, we don't expect to fund more than 2. So again, consider that when you're applying. So that's everything from me for now. Do continue to put your questions in the Q&A, and I'll pass over to Hannah, who'll go over what makes a competitive fellowship application.
So thank you very much, Hayley. My name is Hannah Cooper. I'm a global research professor. I'm also going to be one of the committee funding co-chairs for this call. I just want to reiterate what Hayley said, and please don't put your questions in the chat, put them in the Q&A and start voting on each other's questions so that you can make sure that we have time to answer the questions that are most important to the most people. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what makes a competitive fellowship application. A lot of what I'm going to say is the reverse of Hayley. She said, don't do this, and I'm going to say, do this. But it's good to emphasize these points. I'm in Uganda at the moment for my NIHR project, so please forgive me if I cut out or something. Next slide, please. So, as has been said a few times, we think this is going to be a competitive call. There are over 100 people on the call today already. So we've split it into 2 subcommittees, one for early and one for senior career researchers. And we're going to review all of the eligible applications, shortlist and interview candidates in the way that Hayley described. And I'm going to be co-chair of one of those funding committees. The committees will be made up of panels of global health and care professionals who provide sound and unbiased decision-making on applicants. There will be good representation of people from low and middle-income countries or who have strong knowledge about low and middle-income countries. And I can assure you that these processes really are rigorous and sound and fair. The panels are going to review and assess the applications and then provide this recommendation on what should be funded, which meets the assessment criteria. Next slide. So what can we see in a good application? Well, it's going to be very competitive, so you're really going to have to shine above the rest. One thing that's very strong is when the applicant has got a really distinctive and clear idea and has articulated this direction of growth. So how this is going to, they've come up with a clear, important piece of research that's going to be done, and there's a clear pathway to scale to tackle global health problems. The second is that the applicant has to explain why they need the fellowship now in this stage of their career to be transformative. Why is now going to be this lever by getting the fellowship is really going to get them onto that next stage of being a leader in global health, which is what this fellowship scheme is all about. It's about nurturing the future leaders. The third is about the idea. So you really have to demonstrate clearly why this specific idea or discipline has been identified for research, that there is an unmet need, and that this research plan and partnership will address this. So you need to really give a lot of confidence to the people reading it, thinking this is important, this is a well thought through approach to tackle this idea, and this is the right person and team to do this. Next slide. So I'm going to keep on saying it's going to be very competitive. So you really have to stick within the remit for NIHR Global Health Research Awards. These awards take a long time to put together. Do not put together if you're not within that remit. So if you want to do something that's based in the UK or that has animal research, you're not going to be eligible. Don't apply for this. And don't try and shoehorn an idea into something, try and make something eligible that isn't really, because we'll see through that very easily. The second thing is that you really have to show that you know your background. So you have to show that your research proposal is based on an existing evidence base, and you have to demonstrate why this work will add to the knowledge base. So if you submit something without that kind of credibility for it being important, or that people on the panel know that this issue has already been tackled, you will immediately fail. So this is really important. This is a global health research, so it really has to be directly and primarily relevant to the development challenges of low and middle income countries. It can't be something done, say, in the UK that's also relevant to other settings. It has to be really centered in those low and middle income countries. As Hayley said, there is a whole section on funding, and you need to put that in really clearly. You need to show that there are appropriate resources claimed to do what you're planning to do, but that is realistic, but at the same time that you're representing good value for money. So there's a balance there, okay? So you have to be ambitious but realistic in the funding. Hayley was talking about one of the common pitfalls being not have a community and engagement and involvement plan. So you really need to think about this clearly. This is very important to the NIHR because this is the mechanisms for making sure that the research is relevant to the communities we're trying to serve, that is undertaken in a way that's respectful of them and appreciating their concerns, and that's disseminated back to them. So this has to be clearly thought through, clearly articulated, and with a budget line for it to show that you've really taken on board that you're going to do this in a serious way. And if you can build on previous experience of your group or your organization, so much the better. Equitable research is incredibly important to the global health portfolio. And so you need to outline, not in a tokenistic way, but in a very clear and concrete way, how the collaborators will be equitably engaged throughout the implementation, analysis, reporting, and dissemination. And this could be collaborators from different institutes, from high and low middle-income countries, or from different sectors. It doesn't all have to be researchers. It could be researchers and community groups, for instance. Next slide. Now, the difference between a fellowship application and a grant application is that the fellowship, it's not just about doing research, but it's about developing a person. And in this case, it's about developing the future global health research leaders. So you also need to sell yourself, but you also need to be aware of what kind of training and development needs you will have to be able to become that global health leader. So at the individual level, you need to specify what are the kind of types of skills for progression to the next stage in your academic career that you will focus on. So things like the developing abilities to support capacity strengthening, leading a team, communicating effectively, or developing CEI in research. You need to be clear why these are gaps for you and how you're going to address them. There's also capacity development of institutions. And so you need to also provide evidence of input by collaborators to the content and the design of the proposed activities. Next slide. So your host institution will be required to write a letter of support. And this is a really important letter because it shows that they're standing behind you and they're taking responsibility and they're championing you, they're believing in you. So that statement is very important. It should be tailored to the individual. It shouldn't be cut and paste. So you may want to give a lot of notice to your host institution and work together to come up with something that is strong. The commitment that of the proposed host institution must be to support the applicant, but in the short, medium, and the long term. So you need to think across that kind of spectrum. You need to reflect, they need to reflect the suitability of any proposed partnerships between the host and the main partner organization for the development of the applicant. There needs to be evidence of the host organization commitment to creating and maintaining an inclusive and supportive research culture where you can work and undertake your research project well. And there needs to be an evidence of a track record of research funding. Now, this scheme doesn't require that this host institution has had previous NIHR funding, and there's a deep awareness from myself and others who will be on the panel that some institutions will be in a much more favorable position compared to others in terms of experience and resources. So we will take that into account as we're assessing the different applications so that you wouldn't be penalized by the kind of host institution that you're coming from. We will take it into account, but we still expect a strong statement of support from the host institution. Next slide. So I'm going to finish with some thoughts that I have on developing an application. Again, they're going to tally some of the things that Hayley has said, but in my personal experience, here are some words of advice. So you need to get advice and support from lots of different people. So go outside of your current networks, contact research leaders in the field, contact people who've got NIHR Global Health funding from other pots because this scheme is the first time, and talk to them about your idea, about the kind of challenges that you have, what you're facing, and they can give suggestions. It's very important to become familiar with the literature on the subject to check that you're addressing a true gap. So these proposals are going to be reviewed by people who really know about this. So you need to make sure that you've reflected the current literature and that you're really persuasive, that you're building upon something showing that there's both it's an important issue and that there is a gap. When I'm personally working on an application, I find it, especially when I'm working with other collaborators, I find it really important to start with one aim and 4 or 5 clear objectives, and I work on them quite closely. And that helps frame the rest of the proposal. And when you're developing that, you need to think about this sweet spot between a project that's really ambitious and exciting, but it's still achievable and realistic, and that it makes a coherent whole. So even have an aim and 4 objectives, they need to tie together in some way, and ideally build upon each other. And again, developing these aims and objectives, get advice and support and feedback from lots of people, but once you have them, it helps write the rest of the proposal. I can't emphasize this next bit enough. Read the guidance really carefully and stick to the criteria per section. There is a guidance note, there is different sections in the application. Make sure that you are putting the right bit in the right section. Otherwise, you will not do yourself justice in the kinds of scores that you will get. Once you have the draft, you need to share it for feedback and for advice. Again, don't just go to your friends, go more broadly to different people in the networks and really work on it to improve that proposal. And so with all of this, you really have to give yourself enough time. So as Hayley said, you need to give yourself time to get all of the different permissions and your host institute letter, but you also need that time to go through several iterations with partners and collaborators and mentors where you hone and improve your application. Next slide. So that's what we wanted to say. I'm now going to hand over to Hayley for any questions. There's still time to put questions in the Q&A and to upvote each other, and best of luck with your applications.
Thank you very much, Hannah, for that helpful insight. So yes, as she said, Hannah said, we'll be answering questions now. Please continue to put those in the Q&A, but I'll start with the most popular ones that are there first. The first one is that it's seen there are 10 fellowships that will be awarded. How will they be split between UK and low and middle income country applicants? So the guidance notes do state that there's strategic uplift will be given, strategic priority will be given to applications from low and middle income countries. Essentially what this means is that we expect that more than half of the fellowships that are awarded will go to those based within low and middle income countries. Yeah, so there's no defined split at this point, but we expect that more than half will go. In terms of the budget, does the £750,000 include indirect and estate costs within HEIs? Yes, in short, for the host institution, this is always included. For UK institutions, we fund 80% full economic costing. For low middle income country institutions, we fund 100%. For partner institutions, those partners that are based in low and middle income countries, we also fund indirect costs at those. For high income country partner institutions, we don't fund indirect costs. In terms of the research, it says we mentioned that the research should be applied health research. So what does this mean in context? Does it focus on having a real world impact? So by this, we mean that something that is likely to lead to population health impact. So something that, and that should be demonstrated within your application. So something that is meeting the needs of the populations within the countries where you're working, and as I say, will have a population level impact. Although this is a fellowship to support the career development of the award holder, if the award holder is within a high income country, will additional career development of partners within the low middle income country, including existing staff at the institution who will support the project, and the support staff be taken into account. So as I said, as well as for the individual applying, the support post, that full-time support post, will also have funds available for their personal development and training. Other specific things to support like staff working on the project, if training is needed, then this can be included within the application, but should be fully justified. And as well as we've said, we have that element of institutional capacity strengthening, which should be developed in partnership with the low middle income country institution, whether that's the host or the partner. So there's a few elements where you can include career development and capacity strengthening elements within your project. But there is more guidance on this within the application form guidance within the specific sections. And if you have a specific question around a specific activity, then do get in touch with us and we'll be more than happy to help answer that question. Can we hire several field staff at different ranks over 2 to 3 years for the projects that are involving a large amount of community-based data collection? So again, there is specific guidance on this within the application form guidance, but in summary, yes, you can include costs for additional staff, including field staff. We would class these as shared staff as opposed to the support post. And our general guidance is that for these posts that under shared staff, we would expect that no more than 30% of their salary over the course of the fellowship would be included within the budget. Where this isn't the case and more time is needed, then this would just need to be fully justified so that the committee can judge the value for money element of that component. So it is possible, yes. Does the award fund laboratory work? Yes, again, where there's we can evidence direct impact at the population level, then laboratory work is funded under the scheme. Again, the same with health systems research, where we can evidence that population impact. We would consider this within the scheme. Is there any guidance on the size of the research project included? For example, the percentage of the budget that can go towards the project compared to the salary or capacity strengthening components. So the only element where we have provided some guidance or a cap is for that institutional capacity strengthening component, where we say no more than 5% of the total budget should be allocated to institutional capacity strengthening. Outside of this, we recognise that obviously salaries for the applicant and any support posts, etc., will vary massively between countries and institutions, so there isn't guidance on this. The committee will judge, as Hannah said, the value for money of each application that they're reviewing, and need to make sure that the research you're proposing is feasible within the budget that remains once salary, etc., has been taken up out of the budget. But we don't have any specific guidance on proportions or anything like that. There's a question here around the interview process uses a standardized question list, which could be shared with the interviewee prior to the process. So unfortunately, no, it's not a standardized process, given that each application will vary massively depending on the topic you're focusing on, the speciality of your research, and each application will be reviewed by committee members that have the most relevant expertise to your specific project, and they'll be asking questions that are specific to your project. So while we can't provide any standardized questions, we are hoping to provide support to those that reach the interview stage in terms of mock interviews and an additional video support which can help you to understand the process a little bit better, but we can't provide a list for you. So there's a question here around constructing a good community engagement plan, community engagement and involvement plan, and what are the main points of a competitive CEI plan. So in terms of your CEI, there is guidance on the NIHR core applicant guidance, which you can look at and have a little bit more information. But our key thing would be to really engage with the community you're planning to work with from now. So at the time of thinking about the application, engage with existing community groups, and really embed that within your project throughout. So like I say, don't make it tokenistic and have just, like one meeting at the start, one meeting at the end, but think about like how regularly you should be meeting with them, the budget that should be made available, and really think about how you can take on their feedback to strengthen your project. Really reach out to, as I say, existing groups that may already be functioning within your host institution or any partners, and utilize what's available to you. If you have been a postdoctoral research fellow on a different NIHR grant, not as a co-investigator, are you eligible? So if you've, yes, if you've the only thing to think about here is if you've had an NIHR advanced fellowship previously, then you would be, there would be the limitation that you can have, because you can have 2 advanced fellowships for up to 8 years of funding. And if you've already had a domestic or UK-based advanced fellowship, that would be counted towards your total allocation. If you've been a postdoc on one of our NIHR Global Health Research grants, such as one of the units or groups or centres, etc., then you are still eligible to apply for this as a personal award, and to show how that it would help your career trajectory at this time. Would you be able to amend the time you spend on the fellowship between the application and the interview if successful, for example, changing from 100% to 80% if circumstances change? The answer to this is yes. The key thing probably would be to change what if you were deemed fundable, if you were awarded the fellowship at the time of contracting, then we would be able to review this and to look at how you want to change that. And I'll end on this final question, but what countries qualify as low and middle income countries? Do they need to be on the ODA list? So in short, yes. So the list is linked through the guidance notes, and all the countries at the lower, middle income countries are all included as eligible. Where research is planned to be conducted in middle income countries, then you really need to justify how the research will really benefit the populations and communities within those countries. But all the countries that are listed there are eligible, and the link can be found in the guidance notes. So I will end there, but if we've not been able to answer your question, then please do take a look at our frequently asked questions. We have a number of questions that are already included on there, which again is linked through the guidance notes. But we will be updating those after today's webinars with any key questions that we've seen. So keep an eye on that. And if you don't see an answer to the question that you have, or if you've got a really specific question, then please do reach out to us by email, and we'd be happy to help answer any specific queries. Thank you so much for joining us today and for your interest in the scheme. And we look forward to hearing from you, and the best of luck with your applications if you do decide to apply. Thank you.